Hi everyone, thank you for watching today's talk on utilising audit data to change your induction of labour practice and outcomes, featuring a case study of implementing and increasing DILAPAN-S usage at a UK hospital. Our speakers are Katie Longdon and Phoebe Langer, who are the midwifery quality sister and preceptorship lead midwife at Kettering General Hospital. They'll be taking us through how they first introduced DILAPAN-S, what changes they've made since their initial implementation, their most recent audit results, and their plans for the future improvements of their IOL practice.
So we'll just go and give you a bit of an overview really as to how we got started with DILAPAN. And our DILAPAN journey actually started back in 2019, where we looked at a quality improvement project which was aiming at enhancing experiences for those undertaking an induced labour, with a particular attention to those that have had a previous caesarean section and looking at how we can help improve that induction process for them as well. So we know that mechanical methods have lots of advantages, and you can see from the slide what it says on there. But for us, the reduced risk of tachysystole and hyperstimulation compared to those with pharmaceutical methods was something that we were really interested to explore and something that we wanted to have a look at, because that overall will have a massive implication on the patient experience. We also know as well, not just how they feel about it, but we also know it can then have implications on their uterine activity and the fetal heart rate. So we know as well with the tachysystole and hyperstimulation that can lead to further intervention. So like I said, it's something that we just wanted to explore. We decided that we'd look at two mechanical methods because we wanted to be very open about our exploration of it. And we looked at DILAPAN-S and we looked at the Cook's balloon, and we wanted to compare them for how easy they were to insert, because the reality is everybody needs to be able to insert them. It needs to be done on a regular basis, and it needs to be all of the midwives that are working clinically that are able to insert them. How comfortable it was for the patient, how effective they were, what risks any of them had, and as with most things, the cost implication as well. Can I have the next slide, please? So after our fact finding, we decided that we wanted to proceed with DILAPAN-S, and that decision was made in June 2019. So prior to launching DILAPAN, we wanted to undertake a trial and actually just look at all of those things that I'd mentioned on the previous slide from our own perspective. So how well can we insert them, how comfortable it is for the patient, our own trial. With that trial, we put strict inclusion criteria on it, because we wanted to reduce any potential variations in those results so that we could have some real clear data to look at. And we trialled it on 30 women. So 30 birthing people were included in that trial. And we then launched DILAPAN-S for the very first time in December 2020. So next slide, please.
So as Katie said, obviously we officially launched DILAPAN in December 2020, but as you'll all probably remember, there's quite a lot going on in 2020 in terms of a big pandemic. And with that and many other things that were changing at the time, with PPE policies, visiting policies, DILAPAN just kind of sort of slowly fell by the wayside a little bit. It was one of those that we just didn't have the time to kind of really implement it the way that we wanted to. And as I'm sure a lot of you will know from your own teams, if you're not sort of constantly getting something going, it can quickly sort of fall out of practice. And we were finding we'd kind of go on the board and people would say, oh, I thought we didn't do that anymore, and things like that. So we decided that we needed to do kind of a formal relaunch rather than just kind of trying to drum it back up again. We thought, let's set a date and let's do it properly. Katie at that point was off on maternity leave, so Georgina and I took it upon ourselves to sort of take the reins and get really involved with the DILAPAN team at AG Health and really kind of push forward. So they gave us loads of help. They bought, as you can see in the photo there, some lovely balloons and things, and we got up and running again. What we did before the formal relaunch was we sent out a Teams form to see what was actually stopping people from using DILAPAN. Was it because they didn't know how to? Was it they didn't know what equipment they needed? And we really found that the main things were people felt they hadn't had enough training, they didn't know what equipment they needed or where to find it, and that the obstetricians weren't kind of showing the willingness to push it for the patients and to kind of give the information when they were counselling women about induction of labour. So we decided to kind of tackle those three main points as our drivers. So we've now implemented a DILAPAN training session on every CPD week. So our maternity CPD weeks are mandatory, so everybody will have one annually in their MDT. So it's all of our doctors as well, and our healthcare assistants. And sort of when we first started those sessions, a lot of people would come and go, oh, do I really need to be here because I don't work on the ward, or I'm only a healthcare assistant, I'm a doctor, I don't really do it very often. And we said, no, actually everybody needs to come and listen and learn about DILAPAN, so that whenever a patient asks something about DILAPAN, we all have the information. Because as we know, we don't like to not be armed with information when we're asked questions, and that's kind of why a lot of people weren't using it or offering it in the first place. So that really has helped us. Another thing that we did is we've got a DILAPAN trolley and we've got a DILAPAN box in every clinical area where DILAPAN is used. So we don't have a dedicated induction of labour ward. Our induction of labours are just carried out on our antenatal ward. Some inductions of labour are carried out on our fetal health unit, and our more high-risk ladies are down on labour ward. So that's three areas we needed to cover. Every area has the trolley or the box, and that has the DILAPAN, it has sponge forceps, it has the speculums, gloves, the green wristbands, literally everything they need, including the patient leaflets, patient feedback forms, everything ready to go. And that's really helped sort of the staff on a busy day. It's a grab box ready for them to use. So we got all of that implemented before the actual relaunch itself. And then on relaunch week, what we did is we went round with everybody's favourite sweets and pens, with our DILAPAN trolley, as you can see in the picture there. And we basically just told everybody that would stop and listen about DILAPAN, and really just got it back on the radar of the workforce. So if we just flick on to the next slide, please. So obviously relaunch was great. We had lots of positive feedback. We'd had a few new starters at that time as well, and they really got involved and were really keen to do the training and get up and running with DILAPAN. But we knew obviously that what we needed to do is keep that momentum up, because that's what had happened in previous launches, that things had kind of slipped. So what we did is we scheduled in a theme of the month. So on the months where we don't have maternity CPD week, which is July, August and September, just because of the acuities and the annual leave, we had a theme of the month. So every day, one of us would go into the midwife's handover in the morning and the doctor's handover in the morning, and read a script about DILAPAN, so the main points of sort of information that we felt we needed to get across. So things like how many DILAPAN they should be using, how long the DILAPAN should be staying in for, what they should be doing when the DILAPAN come out, what to do if they're facing any difficulties, where to find the extra equipment, how to document it, just really the key points, just to keep drumming that information in. What we also did on the months where CPD week wasn't running was we went round the unit, literally, as you can see in the picture, with our notice board and again a box of sweets and pens, because you can't go wrong. And we just again stopped everybody and talked about our DILAPAN journey so far. And what we put on there, which a lot of people really liked, was we put the last few months audit data just in a really simplistic form. So Georgina got on Canva and made some pretty posters, and essentially we had DILAPAN use, PROPES use with the normal delivery rate, C-section rate, and like the patient experience rate underneath. And it was just really like succinct, short form data that the staff could see. Women who have PROPES are less likely to have a normal delivery than with DILAPAN, and women who have DILAPAN are more likely to have that normal delivery and to have a more positive experience as well. So, you know, the staff just being able to see those figures and then literally go straight into their lady who's having an induction and tell them those figures straight off was really helpful. Another thing that we have done is we have rewritten our induction of labour policy. So at the time that we originally launched DILAPAN, we had two separate policies. We had a DILAPAN policy or SOP, and we had our general induction of labour policy, and the two kind of referenced each other but didn't quite line up exactly how they should have. And it had just been one of those things that we hadn't quite got round to properly sorting out. So whilst I was covering Katie's maternity leave, I decided just to face it head on and rewrite the induction of labour policy, which was not the easiest thing in the world. But what we did is we incorporated the DILAPAN information fully into the induction of labour SOP to make it read as our induction of labour should be, is that our DILAPAN is our first line for induction of labour. And we've got leaflets now that reflect that as well. So it just meant that all of our information in the trust is backing up what we are doing here. We also have one of the DILAPAN modules, so we keep that in the office, and literally anytime somebody wants to come in and have a go with the module and ask us any questions or ask any of the champions any questions, they can do so. And just saying, to the doctors and the midwives that whenever you've got any questions about DILAPAN, if you think there's any problems, just come and speak to us. So we've got our little team, which is me, Katie and Georgina. But then we've also got our DILAPAN champions, who are mostly experienced midwives and one obstetrician as well, who are on the shop floor daily, who are there with the DILAPAN badges on, ready to give a hand to anybody. And what we're really encouraging is sort of, don't ask them to come and do the DILAPAN for you, ask them to come with you and advise and help and be able to answer the women's questions for them as well. And that's really kind of empowering everybody to get up and running with DILAPAN. So if we click onto the next slide, so this is when we go into our audit section. So me and Katie will try our absolute best to give you as much information as we can. So this graph here is one of Georgina's lovely generated graphs that I'm sure she would tell you hundreds of things about. It is a little bit busy, but basically what it's showing is that our DILAPAN use overall is increasing. There has been some fluctuations, and that has been, as we've seen from various things, like our acuity in the unit, doctor strikes, and we had some availability issues of various equipment and things like that. But in the 6 months from February to July, our DILAPAN use as a percentage of overall induction of labour increased from 36% to 48.5%. There was some fluctuation, as I said, along the months, but we felt that was a really sort of positive change overall. And actually, the number of inductions between those 2 months had vastly increased as well. So in February, where it was 36% of cases, there was only 39 inductions overall. Whereas in the July, where we had nearly 50% of women having DILAPAN, there were actually 62 inductions. So in real terms, we're actually inducing more ladies using DILAPAN. So each month, we're also seeing that there's a higher normal delivery rate with our DILAPAN standard use. And in July, there was a 13% difference, 13% more likely to have a normal delivery if they've had DILAPAN than ProPES, which we felt really, really positive. And as I said before, sort of relaying these figures to the staff and the patient is really what's sort of empowering them to make that decision to have DILAPAN. We just pop on to the next slide. So, as with everything, we want to carry on with this momentum. We want to get DILAPAN so that it's just absolutely easy for everybody to put in. They know exactly how long it's supposed to be in for. They know all the processes and the procedures. We want it to just be muscle memory, brain memory, just roll off the tongue. So we're going to continue encouraging DILAPAN-S, and we'll be doing that in many of the ways that we've already mentioned. We continue to monitor our data monthly. So Georgina does a monthly audit, and she'll continue to do that. And with that audit, we will look at what action plans we need to put in place, what recommendations we need to develop. And obviously they're going to change as our journey continues with DILAPAN. Phoebe has already mentioned that she rewrote our induction of labour policy, but
with that, we now want to expand our outpatient induction, and we want to look at having a more inclusive, broader, inclusive criteria so that we can actually have or offer more outpatient inductions. And we're doing a piece of work at the moment looking at the financial, I suppose, savings around that, because outpatient inductions, we've seen the data that, they have a lower, well, I think it's 9 hours less in labour if they're an outpatient compared to an inpatient. They're spending that first 24 hours of that, 15 hours of that induction at home. So it has a cost implication as well as an experience implication. So that's something that we really want to explore. And we've got some meetings set up with our obstetric team, our matrons, just to kind of look at the process and how we can make the process a bit better, and how we can include more people with that, really. And we would very much like to reduce our prostaglandin purchase and have it so that it's mostly DILAPAN.
So that's everything for our presentation today. As we said, we're more than happy to take questions at the end in the question section. And if there's any sort of more data that we need to provide that the DILAPAN team don't already have, we're more than to look into that as well once we get Georgina back. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Katie and Phoebe. It was really interesting to hear sort of how you've used your audit data to change your practices, and you've seen some really good outcomes. So thank you so much for presenting that to us. I know it's been a struggle and you've not got Georgina there, but you did amazing. So thank you. So everyone here will know that regular audits can enable you to identify problems. They can be really useful, also reflecting on the amazing results that you're getting, identifying gaps in training. So we do get regular audit data sent through to us at AGH from hospitals around the country, and we do assist with audits around the country as well. So this is just here another example of how auditing the data can significantly transform outcomes. So it's a Kingston maternity unit, and they're a 6,000 birth rate hospital. So how they got started was basically they were offering prostaglandins, so both Propus and Prostin, and also the Cook's balloon. So they did have a mechanical method already, but they were looking to sort of add another option in there. The problems that they were facing, and it's always important before you start an audit to sort of identify the areas that you want to, improve on. So they had low patient satisfaction rates. The length of their induction was a problem. So it was going on for quite a long time. And obviously, again, that feeds into those patient satisfaction rates as well. They had a high analgesia usage, which not only is costly for the hospital, but again, patients sometimes, they don't want to be using lots of analgesia. So they found that was a problem for them. They again had high hyperstimulation rates, high syntocinon usage, and high section rates for their VBACs as well. And they had a lot of unsuccessful inductions that were leading to maternal request for section, which then ultimately was obviously increasing that section rate. So they set some goals prior to starting their audit. So the goals of the audit were to improve the flow of the unit and then ultimately improve patient satisfaction as well. They wanted to reduce their hyperstimulation rates, their syntocinon usage, and then ultimately the cost of the induction. And they also wanted to see improvements in the delivery, so the outcomes of the delivery. So again, to reduce that caesarean section rate. So their first audit showed really promising results, and similar to Kettering, they first audited 30 patients, and we always say aim for at least 30 patients when you're doing an audit. Anything less than that is not always a great reflection of the outcome, so trying to aim for at least 30 patients is always really useful. But yeah, because they saw some promising results, they decided to expand that audit. And in their second audit, they actually had 245 patients, so a big jump there. But it allowed them to really get deep in the numbers and really analyse that data. So the outcomes from that wider scale audit, they had a 5% increase in their first round success rate. So the DILAPAN patients were 5% more likely to be ARMable after that first round compared to the Propus patients. And as we know, DILAPAN is usually only in for 12 hours as well. So, that's already shortening that time. They had a 70% reduction in their analgesia usage, which I'm sure you'll all sort of say is massive. Again, saving a lot of money for the trust, saving a lot of staff time. You know, midwives, doctors aren't having to write prescriptions, you're not having to search for the drug keys, sign, you know, morphine out with your colleague, all that kind of stuff that really does add up to the time that you spent with that patient. And ultimately then, you know, when the patient is in labour, they've got a much wider option of analgesia available to them because they've not utilised all that analgesia within that ripening stage. So yeah, there's lots and lots of benefits from that reduction of analgesia usage, and it's not just related to patient satisfaction, but that is where you will see a massive improvement as well. And they also saw a reduction in the time it took for the patient to become ARM-able. So it was 11.1 hours shorter in the DILAPAN group than it was in the PROPES group. So yeah, those patients were ARM-able much sooner than the PROPES patients were. Other findings that they found from this audit was that there was no significant increase in syntocin on use for multips and a small increase for primips. And you know, we can't sit here and say that won't ever happen. There is no synthetic boost of hormones in DILAPAN, so we can't sit here and say you may not see that slight increase as we've said here. But yet they had no increase for their multips at all. They also had improved patient satisfaction, so they handed out sort of a satisfaction survey, and 31.6% more patients in the DILAPAN group said they would recommend it to a friend over the PROPES group. And again, this is where we start to see increased usage of DILAPAN as well, because word of mouth gets around, patients are coming in and requesting DILAPAN as an option because their friends are coming out and recommending it to them. And then they also compared their VBAC rates versus the Cook's balloon. This is one you may remember from their aims, is what they were trying to increase the success rate of. And they saw a 41% increase in successful VBACs with the DILAPAN group when compared with the Cook's balloon. Now, we do like to focus on this a little bit because DILAPAN's often compared with the other mechanical methods. So it is important to sort of look at these numbers. And we know that, you know, we do like to focus on trying to get some successful VBAC. So yeah, 41% increase in that DILAPAN group for their successful VBACs. We are going to move on to questions now. So we'll open the floor for the questions.
Yeah, just a quick question to anyone that can help, basically. So we're just trialling DILAPAN where I work at the moment, and we're getting kind of mixed things from staff about the confidence of being able to insert it, and we're trying to work alongside them to combat that. But I'm finding if certain people aren't in on that day, it's just not happening at all. I just don't know if anyone got any suggestions about how we can engage staff a little bit more with it. To actually, I think they seem to be engaged with using it and the benefits of that, but the actual skill of inserting it. So I don't know if anyone's got any pearls of wisdom.
I think for us, it's just the persistence. You've just got to keep pushing it. And I think we're a fairly small unit. We're sort of about 3,000 births a year.
Yeah, about 3,500.
3,500 births. So sort of in the small to medium bracket, where we've kind of got a workforce where we can kind of, as Georgina's auditing it, she kind of keeps tabs on who it is that's not doing it. It's, you know, we see those trends as well. As you say, if certain people aren't in on a certain day, you kind of know that they will have had very pest things and things being used. So we do directly target people, not in like an accusatory way, but just to find out from them, why is it, you know, was it a particularly hard insertion? Did you try the DILAPAN? You know, and just to try and, you know, target the training to where it needs to go.
Do you want some support when you put a DILAPAN in? Do you want us to come with you? You know, do you want to watch us put a DILAPAN in first? You know, and we very much like found in the early days, people would come to our office, like they'd come and find us, wouldn't they? And they'd be like, I've got a DILAPAN, I've not done it before, or I've got a DILAPAN, I've not got on with it before, can you just come? Or I think I've got that DILAPAN in, you know, that kind of thing. So we just tried to make it really like, come and get us, like we will support however you need us to.
And getting the doctors to get really proficient in it as well, because, you know, with everything else, we found that if you struggle with something, you get a doctor to come and help, you know, a cannula. If you can't do it, you call a doctor. But for some reason, when we first started implementing DILAPAN, the doctors were very much like, no, that's a midwife thing, we can't help with that. Whereas after a little while, we were like, no, let's get all the doctors trained as well. So now it's similar, you know, we're struggling to get a DILAPAN in, we call the doctor, and the doctor comes to have a try as well. So I think just having that support from all angles really is the only way to do it, but it is that persistence
that pays off. Yeah, and just make it, like you say, really, really clear that we've got to proceed with DILAPAN. We need to do it, and
It's not going away.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
If you do have any questions, please do drop us an email, and if it's for Phoebe or Katie, we can obviously forward that on to them. So we are here to help in any way that we can. And thank you ever so much for listening to all three of us. It's been a pleasure. And this recording, as we mentioned at the beginning, will be available. So we will be able to share it with you all once that becomes available. And just again, thank you so much to Phoebe and Katie. That's been really helpful.